morning. We're going to go ahead and start. Looks like that clock says 10 o'clock, and I'm sure you have something to do this weekend. I certainly do. I want to tell you that if at some point I seem a little distracted, my mind is probably out at the Modern Living Mall where the Master Gardeners are preparing making the final touches on items for the plant sale, our fall plant sale. It'll begin at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can still order online if the plants are available. It'll tell you if they are not. And fortunately, we've sold out of a lot of things, but we still have some beautiful plants, and you can get them and pick them up this afternoon. So that would be my commercial that I'm going to start with, I guess. So I think obviously you know I am a Master Gardener. My name is Jo Rake, and I'm going to talk this morning just for a little while, and I think we gave you just a little bit of the outline. It probably helps me as much as it does you, but you can make some notes on there if you're wanting to do that. I'd like to start with just asking who in this group has a greenhouse. Okay, we've got a couple, three. Okay, that's good. And don't hesitate to contribute something if you need to give us some information, because we always like to hear. That's one of the things about Master Gardening, is that you get to talk to people about various things. You have such a common interest. And so we'll start with the question that I always ask when somebody says, well, tell me about a greenhouse or something. I say, well, first off, answer, why do you want a greenhouse? Maybe it's fashionable, I don't know. Maybe it's just the popular thing to do, but I bet that you will find that one of two major reasons will be what you would respond with if you really seriously think about it. One is that you want to overwinter your plants. Listen, I don't know how many garages get full of plants in the winter and the cars get to sit out, you know. The other reason is maybe you want to propagate plants. Maybe you want to grow things from seed. Start your garden a little early. So those are really the two main reasons that we find most people give for wanting a greenhouse. So when I was in high school, I took a class that had to do with real estate, and a lot of things I don't recall, but the one thing I do was almost every time we'd talk about real estate, he'd say, location, location, location. The most important thing about where you put your greenhouse. It's also important for where you're buying a house or building one, but we're talking about the hobby greenhouse. So location, location, location. That's once you've answered that other question, because it's going to make a little difference there. Well, one of the things makes it easy to answer the location, because you got to have the space available, right? I mean, maybe your yard is almost butted up to the next house right there, and that's just all of the yard that you have. So you're going to have to consider where you can put it. On the other hand, boy, it's nice to have a lot of space, only that also can cause problems as you try to figure out what to do with it. Are there permits that you would have to get? Are there deed restrictions? Or maybe you're part of an HOA. I don't know. But if you are, you have to give those some consideration before you start building. So now then, you're saying, okay, I've kind of got that settled. Well, where do you face it? North, east, west? I'm just in the process of getting my chickens in from the farm. I'm going to put them in a lot that I own. It's got a privacy fence, and I'm going to have a chicken coop built. And this issue is driving me crazy. In fact, when I wake up at 5 in the morning, I'm thinking, do I want it to face this way or that? You know, well, it's the same thing with your greenhouse. Where do you want it to face? Okay. What you want is you want to maximize the morning sun. That's where your plants get their start. It's kind of like you heard in health class, or at least you've heard from your doctors or some people like that in the medical field, eat breakfast. Now, it doesn't mean I always do that, but I know what you're supposed to do because it jump starts the morning for you. I think coffee does that, but that's not medically proven. But at any rate, you do need to have it where it gets that morning sun, if possible. Okay? You need some of the sun all day. Think about the winter and think about the summer and that hot West Texas sun. So you're going to have to be careful how much of the west it's going to face. How much are you going to get of that 110 degrees? It will burn up things in the summer. You're going to find, I think, any of you people really use your greenhouses in the summer? I don't see a hand, see? And mine's down too. I can't. When I go in there and look around, it's 120 degrees. And so mine is really used from the fall until late spring or whenever it starts hitting those really hot degrees. But your location there is important. You want to get the summer sunrise, and then you want as little of that extreme heat. What are you going to make your flooring out of? This is also important. Some people like to actually have a concrete floor. It's easy to clean, and that's an important thing, trying to keep your greenhouse clean. You're going to have water, of course, spilled out there. Maybe you want pavers. Those look really nice, and so it kind of depends on that. On the other hand, pea gravel or even lava rock, but especially pea gravel, is more reasonable in price. That's what I have in both of mine. And you can add to as it kind of settles. You can move it around a little bit so that everything's balanced out a little better. So you can use whatever really fits, but these are the main things that you'll find that would be used. Then you have to think about what are we going to build the material, what kind of material in my greenhouse. Maybe you're having it built, maybe you're buying one that comes in a kit, perhaps you're going to try to do it yourself, and maybe you can. You need to look and consider a couple of things. The polyethylene is basically a plastic. It comes in a roll. You can get that, and you could make the sides out of that. That would work fine, even the top. You might consider how thick you want that. It's recommended that you get at least a 6 mil on this polyethylene. It's going to last approximately 3 to 5 years. Again, that's an approximate because it varies with where it is. If it's getting that hot sun, it may not last quite as long, but it's a thought. And especially, I think, if you're a little unsure, and you want to try something, but you don't want to put a lot of expense in until you get started. So this is one thing to consider. Maybe the polycarbonate, and it comes in sheets or panels, and I think you're going to see that this is one of the most common around here that we use. It's going to last a lot longer. It says 15 years. I hope so, because I don't want to have to replace mine anytime soon. But if you're buying a kit or having someone build it for you and then bring the supplies, ask them, what are you using? Because that's important. It'll make a difference in your price too. Glass, of course, is a really nice thing in that it looks crisp, it's clean, it will last much, much longer, but it's also very heavy. And so your frame is going to have to be a little heavier to hold the weight of the glass. So these are just some ideas that you can use. And I'll show some pictures in a little bit where people went and salvaged some old window frames and used those. So there's a lot of neat ways that you could use glass if you want to. Here's some other things, and we'll talk about each of them just a little bit more, that you need to consider. You're going to have electricity. You really will, because our winters do get cold enough that you're going to need some heat in there. And certainly if you're going to propagate or try to keep things growing, etc., you're going to need some light. You need to know how are you going to store the things in there, and that's not quite as critical because we'll always find a place to, put something under somewhere and keep them. But what's your water source? How far will you be from a good water source? Can you get a new faucet put out there? I had one run out that way, by the greenhouse because I needed it. Also, you can use a rain barrel, and I certainly promote that. But right now you'd be, pretty dry. So you're going to need some source of water. These are just some more about the utility access. And remember, these will be an expense for you. So having a greenhouse is not without some expense. And we mentioned this about the proximity. Okay, what about lighting? Actually, some plants can do pretty well if it's positioned. If you've got this location like we talked about, really good, and you're overwintering, you will be able to get by with less lighting, other than if you're going to be out there in the evening or whatever. But on the other hand, if you're going to propagate and grow some plants, then you're going to need to have a way, you're going to need a lot of electrical outlets. I don't even know how many I have in my greenhouse is 8 by 10, one of them is. And I have to have many outlets. Plus those lights that you can put up over the plants and all. It's really nice because now they plug in end to end, and that helps reduce. They don't pull much electricity. Your electricity bill, I believe you'll find, will come mostly from your heat and maybe cooling if you do use something for cooling. LEDs are more efficient, and you can find those shop lights. You can find shop lights that are LED now, and so you can just purchase those. And I don't even risk saying how much it would cost because everything is fluctuated upward, and maybe it'll come down, I don't know. Naturally, we've said natural light is your best source, but you may need a grow light, and I like to use those in my propagation. I have one overhead in my overwinter greenhouse, but I don't use it much, so it just depends on your needs. This is probably as critical as just about anything, and that's your temperature control, because it's hard to control. Even in your own home, as you know, that's probably one of your expenses. You either have air conditioning on or the heating on. We have a few days that maybe you can raise a window or something if you want, but most of the time you're using your electricity, and trying to control the temperature for the plants is another issue that you're going to need to watch. You'll need a good thermometer in there and be ready to watch it. And by the way, I learned, y'all that are a little more techie than I am, which doesn't take much, but you can actually get a thermometer that you can put an app on your phone, and you can tell before you go to bed at night, because I've had to get up at 11 o'clock when I realized, oh my gosh, it's going to freeze tonight. I've got to go down to the greenhouse and turn the heaters on. Get the timer for the heaters and get the app so you know what the temperature is. There's a lot of ways to do this easier than I may do at all times. But you may need a fan in there. Just a regular fan will work. It circulates the air. Maybe an exhaust fan. Depending on the size of your greenhouse particularly, you may want something like this. A small greenhouse, you're probably not going to be able to use the exhaust fan, and you may just want to open the windows. That's what I do with my smaller one. But this just gives you an idea. If you can get the fans mounted toward the top, that just gives you more space there. And so you also can harden your plants a little bit. Some of them growing in the greenhouse need a little of that bit of that wind flow, just getting the air going a little bit. It just gives them a little harder stem, and they'll be more ready to handle being outside. Well, I use shade cloth. I do, because I don't use my greenhouses in the summer, in the deep part of summer, but there are times that you need a little shade cloth over that, and then you could say maybe raise it a little bit, but it gets hot pretty early, as you know, around here. And the shade cloth, it varies. You can buy these at any of the major stores here that carry things like that. And also, it comes in different weights. And so think about what it is and when you want to use it. This past year, I put shade cloth over my tomato plants. I had them in self-watering buckets, and then I used a cattle panel and T-post. That's because I had that stuff at the farm, and so that's what I used, but you can use whatever, and held it up over it. And as a result, I believe that my tomatoes did better this year. I don't think I even got a tomato last year. They burned up. Yes, sir.
What percent shade cloth do you use?
I don't know what it is because it was given to me. But you can look and see, and there are different percentages. You're correct, and I'm sorry I don't know one. John, do you have a recommendation?
Usually, I think we recommend about 50% around here.
Okay, 50% around here. And this was a heavy-duty one that was actually used when we used the greenhouses at McMurray one time. And so we were able to use it. And that's what I used over my tomatoes. Now, I didn't use this heavier one over my pepper plants. And they really have done well. So I'm not sure. I think you have to kind of play with it and see which one works best for you.
Oh, what temperature do you put on?
The temperature in the greenhouse?
Yes.
I think it depends, because the outside temperature is going to drive what is in the inside. And like I said, if it was 100 degrees outside, you're going to have to try to get that on down to 75, 80, and it'll depend on what you're growing. Some plants tolerate the heat so much better than others. Others are, you can tell, they're wilting. You know, it's the same thing about watering them. How much do you water? Well, it depends. I noticed that, aren't there a couple of watering meters back there? I thought I saw those. These are really a really handy tool. Like I said, there's so many neat things that you can use. And John is bringing up a water meter, and you can purchase these on Amazon. And as Master Gardeners, we're not supposed to advertise for any company or anybody, but I will tell you that you can order these, or you can get them in the stores. Many of the stores have them. Now, if you want one, you better hurry, because they're putting away all the spring stuff. In fact, most of it's gone. But this will tell you if the soil needs some water for that plant. You just put it in there, and you can then go from plant to plant. Be sure you're not spreading disease if you've got a plant that's ill. You know, it's kind of like put the mask on. That means wipe this off, and don't take it around. But this is something that I really like that. And my older son has plants, and he would always say, "Mom, do I need to water that, or do I need to do that?" And I'd say, "Well, I don't know, look at it and see." So I bought him one of these, and he just thinks that's the most wonderful thing that I've ever given him. And boy, that was good. You can get them for as cheap as $10 or so. So I'd suggest you consider getting one. Misting, if you have a larger greenhouse, you can get this kind of a fan that it will actually mist some, and I know that they had those at one of our local stores. They had several, in fact. We've been looking at that. The Master Gardeners have a large greenhouse. It's 12 by 30, I believe, and we needed some moisture in the air. You know, it was just so dry, as you know. Gets that way around here, and you can, kind of know when you can't hardly breathe because it's so dry. John.
Just to let you know, those things usually burn between 15 and 20 gallons of water per hour.
So it's important, and if you want an evaporative cooler, it's pretty handy. Somebody told me that they were pretty expensive now. I'd have to say I don't know. But that gives you the air, the circulation, and the moisture, But as he was talking about the amount of water, that means you've got to be sure that you're keeping water and keeping those pads wet. So, everything, like I said, takes time and a good bit of effort. Okay, then we go to heating. The heating a greenhouse with gas is said to be the least expensive. I think it kind of varies, but that's it. Fan heaters will help with the circulation. I used an oil-filled one, which is the last one down here. It's one of the least expensive. You can purchase those again in the stores. You can use them, frankly, in the house or wherever. They're relatively safe, and they do heat real well. I probably have had as many as 6, using about 3 or more in one of my greenhouses at a time. However, that winter that we had the extreme cold and what have you, of course, I don't know if anything would have worked, but I found that some of my plants on one side didn't do well. And it's because the oil field does not circulate, so bear that in mind. And so you could have perhaps used a little fan to help blow that heat. Heat will rise, so you want to keep it down there toward the bottom. But I found some heaters that actually blow the air. And I think there's a picture. There you go. The one with the green timer. You can get it with the timer or without. Again, you can go and look online and you can find these. These are, I believe, less than $200, or they were. And this is what I'm using exclusively now. I'm not even using my oil-filled heaters anymore because I like the fact that it is circulating the air, plus I've got timers. Now, if you do buy the oil-filled, that's fine, but get the kind that you can adjust the temperature, and you can do that. That helps a lot, because if it's just one setting, you have no control. That's where your app with your thermometer comes in, I guess, is knowing what the temperature is. But I like this the best. You can also just use these little heaters, any kind, really. But I will tell you that my electricity bill in an all-electric house is higher in the winter than it is in the summer. And maybe that's true for everybody, but it's not because of how we keep our house that warm. We don't keep it as warm as you might think. It's these electric heaters. I know it is, because I have a separate bill from there. So just be aware that it could cost you. Water supply, you may want to just, as I said, I had them run some water and put a faucet out there for me, and I can hook up a hose, and especially with my overwinter house. I don't use it in the one for the nursery. As you guessed, I have 2 greenhouses, and I'm going to tell you now that one of the issues is whatever size you think you want to get a bigger one, okay? Because you'll end up with another one if you don't. Or at least that's what happened to me. I had one built, and it was wonderful. But then I thought, oh, now where am I going to put my other plants? So I had to have another one. And so I have my overwinter, and then I have what I call my nursery. And that's where I do my propagation and enjoy doing that. I can use the hose, if I kind of checked. Plus, I ought to know what my plants need. If they're my succulents, I don't need to water them every day, do I? And in the winter, you won't even need to water many of your plants as often. They adapt, and they do pretty well, but they are inside, and so you will need to be able to water them some. Rainwater is your very best thing. This was a picture taken way back when I got the very first one built, and I had a 100-gallon tank put there. 100 gallons is not going to last the whole time if it doesn't rain. In fact, it's pretty empty right now. But it was real handy. I had gutter put on one side and then run down there. It actually was coming off of a 30 by 36 storage room that I have on that lot, and it works pretty good. I also have a 1,500-gallon tank that I can use, but I use this smaller one just for the greenhouse, and I think it helps when you're propagating. I just like the rainwater on them. It's the purest form. There's no chemicals in it or anything, but that's just probably my opinion. You can put drip irrigation, and I'll show you one of our gardener's greenhouses where he has drip irrigation throughout the winter for his plants. What I like about that, of course, is you don't have to go down there and water every day. You can set this on timers and you've got it. And it's really an efficient way because you can determine, you can set that dripper and all for different ways depending on the plant. Is it going to need such and such, or is it, you should need to open that a little bit more, or what have you. So this is a great place to use drip irrigation. We mentioned the humidity. That's important for most of your plants, especially I think for the overwinter, but it's also important on your other ones, but your little seedlings are going to get on up and they still will need some. If you get too much humidity, you're going to find problems though, so you kind of have to balance this. You can get diseases on your plants. You can get diseases and pests in your greenhouse, and so you obviously must go in and check. You can't just put your stuff in the greenhouse and leave it and wait for, spring to come. You need to be checking on it, giving it the water it needs, making sure there aren't things growing that shouldn't be growing in there, and taking care of it. You'll need some supplies, and you can purchase these just about anywhere that carries any kind of gardening supplies. Again, I'd mentioned that unless they carry them year-round, which a few do, you better get you some pretty soon when before winter sets in, because obviously they don't carry as much. But you can order most anything over online. And you will need things like your strip lights if you're going to grow things. And I like to use racks. You can have benches, which you may need a bench in order to work on, but then I put my plants on racks and put the grow light above them, and it works out real well. Consider the soil, and you'll need containers because you want to try to keep your soil moist. You'll need perhaps things like perlite. That's probably your most common one. And the other one, John, vermiculite. I was trying to say something with a V. But you may need something like that. The perlite will help with the aeration, and it will help it retain that moisture. The vermiculite is more going to be used with other kinds of plants. So it just depends on what you're doing. But consider that. Pots and containers. These are primarily for a place that you're going to propagate, if you're going to start growing seeds and things like that. Okay, here's a few greenhouses that we'll just go through and talk through them as we, am I right in your way? I'm sorry, I just keep moving around, don't I? This one obviously looks like that, it kind of looks like it has sheets, like it could be that, the one with the sheets, the film. But on the other hand, it could be that it was the plastic. It's hard to tell just from the picture. This one's a nice one. It gives you a little height. It's got a lot more room there for the sunlight, and that's pretty handy. I told you that they had one, and this was one of our gardeners. And I don't know where she got all these windows, but you can scrounge around and find them. They tear down houses, they replace windows, you could talk to different people. It's kind of unique, but it works pretty well. And I think that she put on here, on some of them, a little latch, so you have a lot of ways to open and give the air circulation, see? And also to regulate the heat in there.
What kind of roof does that one have? Do you know?
I'm trying to go back. It looks like tin, doesn't it? And all I can tell you is that's what it looks like. It likely is the polycarbonate, and it is probably a sheet of polycarbonate, or a couple of them put together. But it looks a lot like tin, which I would not advise, but, that I'm not sure, Lucy. And this is just another picture. She also put a bench across there, and you can see how the windows look. They think really nice. Oh, that I was going to say, that one, let me go back. Now then, I think pretty sure that it'll be that polycarbonate. Yeah, it's not tin, as you look at that one. Again, this is probably, the roof is probably the same thing. It's some of those sheets of polycarbonate. This is another one, a little different look, but using the different windows. Inside the greenhouse, if you have room and can, it's handy to have a little faucet put in with your sink, because invariably you just need a little water for this. You want to wash something off or do whatever, and it's really nice. This one didn't have an outlet. It just drained into a bucket. If you do that, you will need to be careful for mosquitoes. You know, they like us in West Texas. And use just one of those mosquito dunks that you can also purchase, and just keep one in that water. It works good. So this is a real good idea if, again, you have room for it and can. This one, and one of our master gardeners had built. It's large and it's really nice. I've been in it when it was finished, and you can see that she left room to put a table right down the middle so that she could work at the table and then turn and put her plants out on each side. And that was one of the ways that she did that. You can buy kits, and you can buy them here in town. A couple of years ago, I know we could buy them for about $300 or something at another store here in town. You can order them, and you can put them together. And again, I don't think it's a bad thing at all if you're really trying to decide what you want and you don't have quite as much expense into it. So it's something to give consideration to. This is the plastic, and it's going to last a few years, but by then you should know what you really want. This one is real interesting. They started with a trampoline frame. The wind had come through, torn up the trampoline, and so rather than throw it away, they took it and used half of it like that. And then for the other end, did the same thing. Pretty good. Now, it only lasted a couple of years, though, as we said, that polyethylene will not last as long, and so it had to be redone. She did it. There you go. And used the sheets of the polycarbonate, which worked really well there. See, but she continued to use that frame, and it worked just fine. So I know my son and them have a trampoline, and after a high wind out towards Tuscola back in the spring, they found theirs down about 3 or 4 houses. And you may find one in your backyard, and you know, finders keepers, so you can, I guess you could do whatever with it. But anyway, it works. There's the front, or the back, I guess it's the back, because it doesn't have a door. And she used propane heaters. And that is another way that you can do that, and you can purchase those. As we said, a gas or a propane. I guess I was fascinated with this. I took a lot of pictures of it, didn't I? This is the one that I was telling you the man uses drip irrigation. He's one of our gardeners, and he has a lot of hibiscus. That's kind of his specialty. And he knows just exactly how much time to put on that. And he gets them all in there. They have a special place, and he puts them all in there, and they stay all winter and do wonderfully. So that's why he uses it. He doesn't try to grow new ones. He's not using it for propagation. He is using it strictly for overwintering, which is a great way to do, and get your car in the garage too. This was, again, an old picture of one of my greenhouses, and you can see the gutter that I had that goes around, and it works real good. That wasn't very much to add to that. The problem, do you see a problem with this? There is a problem, and one of them is that storage building. Look at how close it is. So I do not get the maximum morning sun because this side over here is the east. But I didn't realize that or know all that when I had it built and put there. And so this is a no-no, or let me just say it wasn't a no-no because that was one of the locations that needed to be. But I didn't get to maximize the sun like there. And I do get plenty of that afternoon sun from the west.
I noticed several of the pictures that you've shown, they're in lots of trees. I mean, they're in lots of shade. Mm-hmm.
You want to avoid that as much as possible. It's kind of like this. Avoid these kinds of things, but don't let that keep you from ever doing something. It just means that you're going to have to figure out how to maximize it. Can the trees be cut back? Maybe not if they're your neighbors, I don't know. But if they're over there, you could get them trimmed back. The other option on the tree thing is the diffuse light will protect if it's coming from the west. So, John?
If they're deciduous trees during the winter, they'll drop their leaves. And so you don't have that shade issue in the winter.
Right. But many of them will stay full, and it becomes somewhat problematic. Also, of course, when you get the leaves, you may get them on the top of there and covered up. And so I would avoid some of the trees if you can. This, I don't know, I've shown, I think before, has the pea gravel on the floor. I like that just fine. I don't have any problem with it. Our greenhouse at the extension office out there, and it's, by the way, it's on the Taylor County grounds out there, the expo grounds. And if you want to drop by and take a look at it, it is locked. You can't go in, but you can see it. And it's very, very nice. It has a wooden floor. And it's been treated, of course, and that's the way it was built. But I use the pea gravel, and I've had this for several years, and I think I've only had to add additional pea gravel maybe once or so. Just, use, and it goes down. This person took advantage of a little space and made a kind of a lean-to, put their greenhouse right up against the house using the wall of their home for one of the walls for their greenhouse. And it works just fine. Sometimes this will be beneficial because it may help with the heating and cooling. And so it really works out good. I know one of the gardeners has a big back porch that has a lot of glass around it, and she uses that for her greenhouse. It's well insulated, and so as a result, she leaves the doors open into her house, and the heat helps, and she doesn't have to have extra heaters or even for cooling. So, you can see the advantages. This is a very nice one. You can't tell too much from this, but the windows, she had access to some old shower doors. They had taken out a lot of the showers in a building project that had them in lots of the different houses or apartments, I guess, and she got access to those, and that's what the windows are made out of, was made out of shower doors. And I show some of these just to show you, just get creative. And it doesn't have to be a great expense. And, ask people about things if you need something. Okay, somebody built that. Now, my problem with this one is it doesn't give you much height there on the sides, and I'm wondering how many plants you can get in there like that. But if you're trying to propagate, you might be okay. That it's just whatever suits you and what you can find that would fit. Now this is really another little idea. It depends on how many plants you have to overwinter. And I'm already outgrown my overwinter one. I don't think I'm going to get a third greenhouse, but I can tell you, now it's come time to pare down how many plants I've got, probably. But this one would hold quite a few, and it looks like you can put the taller ones down the middle once you got the others placed. It's got to be that regular plastic film because this would not hold the polycarbonate I can tell from the frame. Yes, sir.
Some of those like this, the others also, you have to bear in mind the wind that we get out here. The wind will, take them down.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Some of them like this,
Uh-huh.
and all the greenhouses, you need to bear in mind what they're made of, the wind.
Oh, yes.
Down here.
The wind is problematic, and I will tell you, both mine are anchored. And they're not light. You've seen that one, and the other one's similar.
That one like this.
But this one would blow right over in a heartbeat, kind of like I told you about the trampoline. But seriously, and that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
And where I like to grow things like watermelon and vegetables, what temperature would you put that at?
I'd say, well, those are spring ones. I don't have a temperature. Do you, John?
What vegetables?
Like watermelon, cantaloupe,
Watermelon and cantaloupe need pretty warm temperatures, so 50 plus.
okay, and tomatoes and things like
Yeah.
that.
And you know, in my overwinter, I don't keep my greenhouse above 45 most of the time, less, 40 or less, because they're not going to freeze. And so it just seems like that makes good sense, and it's worked well for me.
How much would you water those?
How much would you water them? You're just, is that what you said?
Yeah.
You would just water as the plant needed. You can use this, but also you'll see you're going to start them out in small pots and then move them up to larger ones. And you need to look and see how long it takes for the seeds to germinate. And
One of those big planting boxes, so I'm sure. Like put a top table, so.
yeah, you just water it. It'll tell you. Read the back of the seed package. That'll give you an idea if it's a plant and something that's going to need watering and kept moist. I bought a fern the other day, just a real small one, and it said keep it moist for several weeks, and even for the first year, keep it relatively moist, but thereafter you can water once a week. Well, that'll depend on what the once a week is, If it's outside and it's 100 and something degrees, I won't have it in the hot sun, but I'm just saying it'll dry out. So it'll vary some.
Joe,
Yeah.
on that, if you're trying to grow something over the winter, we have to remember that we're not just trying to keep it warm. It's similar to chickens laying eggs. It's got to have so much light, so you're probably going to have to add the light because the daylight hours are shorter.
Right.
You have so many hours to actually.
Yeah, and like on her question about the watermelons and things, she's trying to propagate, and so she's going to need probably some strip light initially to get it going, and maybe, like again, you look at the time for germination and then watch when's the last freeze and can you put it out, and then it'll get it. But you're exactly right about the daylight. That's why it's important to know where you locate it, if it's there. This one right here would certainly blow away too, but it was specific for a plant, something that they really wanted to watch and take care of. Now, if you're going to buy one for all those 75 trees, or you'd have to buy a bunch of them, wouldn't you? He's going to plant a bunch of trees, and so I'll tell you. And some more.
Oh, can greenhouses also have fruit trees?
Can they what?
Have like fruit trees, or are those too big?
Fruit trees.
Huh?
She's saying fruit trees.
What about them?
Can they have, greenhouses have fruit trees?
Sure. You could put fruit trees in there. If you keep them in they'd have to be in a bucket that you could move them in, or you can start them. Now, right now is the time to plant your trees, shrubs and trees, because they'll get that root system and be a lot better off this summer.
Because some greenhouses are too short to like put trees in.
Yeah, you can put those in there. You could. Okay, here's another one that they have constructed next to the side of a house. Just gives you an idea. They can look very attractive, really, and not be a problem. I guess the most important thing is, you've heard that saying, some people, it's my way or no way. Well, or take the highway, and it's not. When you're building or getting a greenhouse, you have to consider all these things. Just consider them. You don't have to do them like I've said exactly. Everybody customizes their own thing, because what we want more than anything is that you enjoy your greenhouse. And if you know right off you want one, then spend what you need to and get it done right. I wish, sometimes I wish I had done and put one big one. I've learned that I kind of like having the two, because I just can do, like I said, my overwinter plants are very different from the ones I'm trying to propagate. So for me, it works okay. It was an accident, but I made lemonade. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Do we have questions or comments?
When you buy